The sound of laughter drifted up from our living room as I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, holding the dinner plate I'd prepared for myself. It was Thursday night, which meant Sarah's monthly wine night with her college friends, Jennifer, Monica, and Kate. I'd gotten used to the routine over our 8 years of marriage. They'd arrive around 7, drink wine, gossip about work and relationships, and I'd make myself scarce in our home office or upstairs. But tonight, something made me pause at the top of the stairs instead of retreating to my office. Maybe it was the particular quality of their laughter, sharper, more conspiratorial than usual. Maybe it was the way Sarah's voice carried a tone I'd never heard before. Before we dive into this story of betrayal, strategic planning, and the moment when everything unraveled, make sure to hit that like button if you've ever felt the sting of being taken for granted. Drop a comment about your own experiences with trust in relationships, and subscribe for more stories of people who discovered their true worth when others tried to diminish it. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. I set my plate down on the hallway table and moved quietly toward the staircase, not intending to eavesdrop but drawn by something in the conversation below. "I can't believe he hasn't figured it out yet," Sarah's voice floated up, followed by the clink of wine glasses. "Seriously, how clueless can one person be?" That was Jennifer's voice, tinged with amusement. "He's clueless," Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I've been seeing this guy for months. Honestly, I feel bad for how easy it's been." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the banister, my knees suddenly weak, as the conversation continued below. "Wait, months?" Monica's voice. "How long exactly?" "Since February. Remember when I started those late meetings with the Henderson Industries account? Well, there is no Henderson Industries account." The women laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. "Sarah, you're terrible," Kate said, but she was laughing too. "What does he think you're doing?" "I tell him I'm working late. He brings me dinner to the office. Meanwhile, I'm at a hotel with someone who actually knows what I want." More laughter. I closed my eyes, feeling like the floor was disappearing beneath me. "Does he suspect anything?" Jennifer asked. "Are you kidding? Last week I told him I needed to work Saturday, and he offered to pack me a lunch." A lunch, while I was planning to spend the day in bed with Marcus. Marcus. The name landed like another punch. "Who is this Marcus guy again?" Monica asked. "He's the regional sales manager for Crawford Technologies. We met when I was supposed to be prospecting new clients for the agency. He's everything David isn't. Confident, decisive, knows how to take charge." David. That was me. My own wife was comparing me unfavorably to her lover while I stood 20 feet away, listening to her friends laugh at my expense. "And David has no idea?" Kate pressed. "None. He even bought me a necklace last week. Had no idea it was after I'd been with Marcus. It's like living with a pet that pays bills." The cruelty of that statement, reducing 8 years of marriage to being a bill-paying pet, cut deeper than anything else she'd said. I heard the sound of wine being poured, glasses clinking, and more laughter. "So, what's your plan?" Jennifer asked. "You can't keep this up forever." "I don't know yet. Marcus keeps talking about leaving his wife, but you know how men are. In the meantime, David makes good money and the house is nice. Why rock the boat?" "Sarah, you're playing with fire," Monica said, though her tone suggested admiration rather than concern. "Maybe, but it's the most alive I've felt in years." I'd heard enough. More than enough. I picked up my dinner plate and walked quietly back to our bedroom, my mind reeling from what I'd just discovered. Sarah wasn't just having an affair. She was openly mocking me to her friends, treating our marriage like a joke, and planning to continue the deception indefinitely. But as I sat on our bed, staring at the meal I no longer had any appetite for, something unexpected happened. Instead of rage, instead of the urge to storm downstairs and confront her in front of her friends, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. For months, I'd sensed something was off. Sarah's late nights, her distraction, her decreased interest in our relationship. I'd blamed work stress, our settling into comfortable routine, the natural evolution of marriage. I'd even blamed myself, wondering if I'd become boring or inattentive. But now I knew the truth. And with that truth came a strange sense of calm. Sarah thought I was clueless. She thought I was a pet that paid bills. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. I opened my laptop and began making some very important notes. The next morning, Sarah kissed me goodbye with the same casual affection she'd shown for months, her performance seamless after years of practice. "I'll probably be late again tonight," she said, adjusting her makeup in the hallway mirror. "The Morrison account is being really demanding about their quarterly projections." "Of course," I replied, watching her face for any sign of guilt or deception. There was none. "I'll probably work late too. That Peterson Industries proposal is due Monday." "Okay, honey. Love you. Love you too." She left for work, and I called in sick. I'd spent most of the night thinking about what I'd overheard, and I'd come to several conclusions. First, I needed evidence. Second, I needed to understand the full scope of Sarah's deception. And third, I needed to plan my response carefully. Emotional confrontations could be deflected, denied, or turned around, but documented facts were undeniable. I started with our shared computer. Sarah used it occasionally for personal tasks, and she'd never been particularly careful about security. It took me less than an hour to find what I was looking for. Email conversations with someone named M. Crawford, Marcus, obviously, going back 4 months. The early messages were flirtatious, but could have been interpreted as harmless workplace banter. But as the timeline progressed, they became explicitly sexual and romantic. "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again." "David's working late again. Perfect timing for us." "I told him I'm at a client dinner. He's so trusting it's almost sad." That last one made me physically sick. I copied everything to a secure folder and continued searching. Sarah's credit card statements revealed a pattern I'd somehow missed. Charges at hotels during her supposed late work nights. Expensive lingerie purchases from stores she'd never shopped at before. Dinners at restaurants she'd never mentioned. Her phone was password protected. But I knew her patterns. She used variations of the same password for everything. Our anniversary date with different number combinations. It took me 3 tries to get into her personal email account. What I found there was even more damaging than the computer files. Photos. Dozens of photos of Sarah with a man I'd never seen before. Marcus, obviously. They were at restaurants, hotels, even what looked like a weekend getaway to the mountains that coincided with a work conference she'd attended alone. But the worst discoveries were the conversations with her friends, specifically Jennifer, whom I'd heard laughing the night before. "David bought flowers yesterday for no reason. Guilt flowers while I was with M. The irony is killing me. He keeps asking if I'm happy in our marriage." So sweet and clueless. I should feel bad about this, but I don't. I feel more like myself than I have in years. The casual cruelty was breathtaking. This wasn't a woman struggling with a mistake or battling guilt over an affair. This was someone who found amusement in deceiving the person who loved her most. I backed up everything to multiple locations: cloud storage, external drives, printed copies. Then I began phase 2 of my investigation. A private investigator would have been the professional approach, but I had advantages that a PI wouldn't. I knew Sarah's schedule, her habits, her lies. I knew she was telling me she'd be working late while actually meeting Marcus. That afternoon, I followed her. Sarah left her office at 4:30 p.m. and drove directly to the Marriott downtown. She met Marcus in the lobby, a tall, well-dressed man who looked like the kind of person Sarah had always claimed to find attractive in movies. Confident. Polished. Nothing like the boring engineer she'd apparently settled for. I took photos from across the street with a telephoto lens I'd purchased that morning. Sarah and Marcus kissing in the lobby, walking toward the elevators together. The kind of evidence that would be impossible to explain away. I didn't follow them upstairs. I'd seen enough. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything, every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of deception. I created a comprehensive timeline that showed exactly how long the affair had been going on and how elaborate Sarah's lies had become. But documentation was only part of my plan. I also began researching Marcus Crawford. LinkedIn, social media, company directory. building a complete picture of the man my wife was cheating with. What I discovered was interesting. Marcus wasn't just having an affair with Sarah. He was married with 2 young children. His wife, Linda Crawford, was a teacher who frequently posted about their family activities and how much she loved her husband. Marcus was living the same double life as Sarah, deceiving his own family while helping destroy mine. I also learned something else. Crawford Technologies had a strict policy about fraternization between employees and clients. Marcus's relationship with Sarah wasn't just adultery. It was a potential career-ending violation of company policy. Armed with this information, I began planning the most important presentation of my life. Sarah had found my trusting nature amusing. She'd laughed with her friends about how easy it was to deceive me. She was about to learn that trust and naivety weren't the same thing, and that the person she thought was a clueless pet was actually someone who'd been taking very careful notes. 3 weeks after overhearing Sarah's wine night confession, I had everything I needed. 47 printed pages of evidence, digital backups stored in multiple locations, and a clear understanding of exactly how long and how extensively my wife had been betraying our marriage. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I wanted Sarah to face the consequences of her choices in front of the people whose opinions mattered most to her, the same way she'd humiliated me in front of her friends. Sarah's parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, had always been supportive of our marriage. They'd helped us with the down payment on our house, celebrated every anniversary with us, and treated me like the son they'd never had. Sarah valued their opinion more than anyone else's, and their disappointment would devastate her more than any divorce proceedings. That's when I conceived the perfect plan. Sarah had mentioned scheduling another wine night with the same group for the following Thursday. She'd been in a particularly good mood lately, probably because her affair was going well, and had suggested making it a bigger celebration. Jennifer just got promoted, and Monica's engagement is official, she told me over breakfast. I thought I'd make it special. Maybe order some nice catering, get good wine. That sounds wonderful, I'd replied. What time are they coming over? 7, probably. I'll need to get home early to set up. Can you make yourself scarce that evening? Actually, I was thinking about visiting my brother anyway. Perfect timing. Sarah smiled, pleased that her deception would be even easier than usual. But I wasn't planning to visit my brother. Instead, I called Robert and Linda Morrison. Robert, it's David. I hope you and Linda are doing well. David, great to hear from you. What's going on? I wanted to talk to you about something special I'm planning for Sarah. She's been under a lot of stress lately with work, and I thought a surprise might lift her spirits. That's thoughtful of you. What did you have in mind? Well, she's having her friends over Thursday evening for wine night, and I was thinking about surprising her with dinner from her favorite restaurant. But I thought it would be even more special if you and Linda joined us. She talks about you both constantly, and I know how much she values your opinion and support. David, that's a lovely idea. Linda would be thrilled. Sarah has seemed a bit distant lately, and I know Linda's been worried about her. Perfect. Sarah's own mother had noticed her changed behavior. I was thinking around 7:15 or 7:30. Her friends will be there, so it'll be a real celebration. What's the occasion? Nothing specific. I just want to remind Sarah how much she's loved and supported. You two have been incredible to both of us over the years, and I thought it would be nice to have everyone together. David, you're a good husband. Sarah's lucky to have you. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. I'll handle all the arrangements. Just show up ready to celebrate. Thursday afternoon, I left work early and made my final preparations. I'd timed everything perfectly based on 3 weeks of observing Sarah's patterns. Sarah would leave work at 5 p.m., stop at the wine store for expensive bottles, and arrive home by 6 p.m. to set up. Her friends would arrive promptly at 7 p.m., and the real conversation, the mocking, cruel discussion of her affair, would begin around 7:20 p.m., once they'd had enough wine to feel comfortable. Robert and Linda would arrive at 7:25 p.m. Just in time. I'd prepared a folder containing selected highlights of my evidence. Not everything, but enough to make the situation undeniably clear. Bank statements showing hotel charges during her supposed work meetings. Screenshots of text messages between Sarah and Marcus. Photos of them together at the Marriott. I'd also printed a timeline showing how Sarah's lies had escalated over the past 4 months, including specific instances where she'd used her parents as alibis for her deception. But the most important element of my plan wasn't the evidence. It was timing. I wanted Sarah's parents to hear her mock our marriage in her own words before they saw the documentation. I wanted them to understand who their daughter had become before I presented proof of what she'd done. At 6:45 p.m., I parked 3 blocks from our house and walked to a coffee shop where I could see our front door. Sarah's car was in the driveway, and I could see lights on in our living room. At 7:02 p.m., Jennifer's silver Honda pulled up. At 7:05 p.m., Monica arrived in her red SUV. At 7:08 p.m., Kate parked her blue sedan behind Monica. At 7:20 p.m., I called Robert Morrison. "Robert, are you and Linda ready for our surprise?" "We're just pulling into your neighborhood now. Should we knock or just come in?" "Come around to the back door. I want this to be completely unexpected." At 7:23 p.m., I watched Robert and Linda Morrison walk up our back walkway, carrying flowers and a bottle of wine, excited to surprise their daughter. At 7:25 p.m., I joined them at the back door. "David, this is so thoughtful," Linda whispered. "Sarah's going to be so happy." "She's definitely going to be surprised," I replied, and quietly turned the key in the lock. The sound of laughter and conversation drifted from the living room as we entered through the kitchen. I could hear Sarah's voice clearly, animated and cheerful in a way I hadn't heard in months when she talked to me. I led Robert and Linda through the dining room toward the living room, gesturing for them to stay quiet so we could surprise the group. That's when we heard it. "The best part is how grateful he gets," Sarah was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the house. "Yesterday he thanked me for working so hard for our future. If he only knew I was working hard on my future, just not with him." The women laughed, and I saw Linda Morrison's face change from anticipation to confusion. "Seriously though," Sarah continued, "I should win an Oscar for this performance. Last week I came home from the hotel, and he'd cooked dinner and drawn me a bath because I looked tired from work. I was tired, all right, just not from the kind of work he thought." More laughter. Robert Morrison's expression was shifting from confusion to something darker. "Sarah, you're horrible," Jennifer's voice. "But honestly, how do you live with the guilt?" "What guilt?" Sarah replied. "I'm happier than I've been in years. David's sweet, but he's safe, predictable. Marcus makes me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." Linda Morrison gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth as she realized what she was hearing. "Besides," Sarah continued, "David's so trusting it's almost insulting. I could probably tell him I was having an affair, and he'd ask if there was anything he could do to support me through it." The laughter that followed was the cruelest sound I'd ever heard. But it was also exactly what I'd been waiting for. I stepped into the living room doorway with Robert and Linda Morrison right behind me. "Actually," I said quietly, "I can think of a few things I could do to support you through it." The silence was instantaneous and complete. Sarah turned toward my voice, wine glass halfway to her lips, and saw not just me but her parents standing in our doorway. The expression on her face, shock, terror, and something that might have been recognition that her world had just ended, would stay with me forever. For a moment, nobody moved. Sarah sat frozen with her wine glass suspended in midair. Her friends looked between her and us with expressions of pure panic, and Robert and Linda Morrison stood behind me like they'd been physically struck. "Hello, Sarah," I said calmly. "Hello, ladies." Jennifer was the first to recover. "We should probably go," she said, standing quickly and looking around for her purse. "Actually," I said, "I'd appreciate it if you stayed. You've been such an important part of this story." Monica and Kate were already gathering their things, but they stopped at my words. "David," Sarah finally found her voice. "What are you doing here? I thought you were visiting your brother." "I changed my plans. I thought your parents might like to join your wine night. You know how much you value their support?" Linda Morrison stepped forward, her face pale. "Sarah, what were you just talking about?" What did we just hear? Sarah looked at her mother, then at her friends, then back at me. I could see her mind racing, trying to find an explanation that would make this go away. Mom, Dad, you misunderstood. We were just talking about a TV show, a character on a show who… Sarah. Robert Morrison's voice was quiet but firm. I've known you for 26 years. I know when you're lying to me. The authority in his voice seemed to deflate whatever explanation Sarah had been constructing. Besides, I said, reaching into the folder I'd brought, I have some additional context that might help clarify things. I handed Robert the first page, a bank statement highlighting the hotel charges that coincided with Sarah's supposed late work, meetings. These are charges to our joint credit card, I explained. The Marriott downtown, always on evenings when Sarah told me she was working late at the office. Linda looked over her husband's shoulder at the statement, then up at Sarah with an expression of dawning horror. Sarah, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. I handed Robert the second page, screenshots of text messages between Sarah and Marcus. Robert read them silently, his jaw tightening with each line. When he finished, he looked at his daughter with an expression I'd never seen before. "Who is Marcus Crawford?" he asked. Sarah's composure finally cracked. "Daddy, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain how you've been lying to your husband? Explain how you've been laughing about deceiving the man who loves you. It's not what you think." "Sarah," Linda Morrison's voice was shaking, "we heard you. We heard you laughing about lying to David. We heard you making fun of his trust in you." Jennifer, Monica, and Kate had edged toward the door, clearly desperate to escape the family confrontation they'd inadvertently helped create. "You can go," I told them. "But you should know that everything you heard Sarah say tonight was true. She's been having an affair for 4 months while I've been working extra hours to pay for the house she's been using to entertain her friends and plan her deception." Jennifer looked like she wanted to say something, but Monica grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the front door. Kate followed without a word. When they were gone, I handed Robert the rest of the evidence. "These are photos of Sarah and Marcus together," I said. "Restaurants, hotels, what appears to be a weekend getaway that coincided with her work conference in March." Robert looked through the photos methodically, his expression growing colder with each image. "There's also a complete timeline of her lies," I continued, "including the times she used you both as alibis for her affairs. The family dinner that ran late in February? She was actually at a hotel with Marcus. The emergency family meeting in March? Same thing." Linda Morrison sat down heavily on our couch. "Sarah, how could you do this? How could you lie to us and use us to hurt David?" "Mom, I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened, and then I didn't know how to stop it." "You didn't know how to stop it?" Robert's voice was rising. "You didn't know how to stop lying to your husband and mocking him to your friends?" "Daddy, please, you called him a pet that pays bills." Linda's voice cracked. "We heard you, Sarah. We heard you laughing about his kindness and trust." I pulled out the final document in my folder, a letter I'd prepared earlier that day. "This is a formal notification that I've filed for divorce," I said, handing it to Sarah. "I've also taken the liberty of contacting Crawford Technologies' Human Resources Department about their employee fraternization policies." Sarah's face went white. "What did you do?" "I provided them with documentation of Marcus Crawford's inappropriate relationship with a client. Apparently, it's grounds for immediate termination." "David, you can't. Marcus has a family." "So do I. So did we. Until you decided that laughing about my naivety with your friends was more important than the vows you made to me." Robert Morrison stood up and looked at his daughter with profound disappointment. "Sarah, your mother and I raised you to be better than this. We taught you about integrity, about honesty, about treating people with respect. Daddy, I know I made mistakes, but these weren't mistakes, Sarah. Mistakes are accidental. This was calculated cruelty. You planned to deceive David indefinitely while mocking him to your friends." Linda Morrison was crying now. "How could you be so cruel to someone who loves you? How could you take his kindness and turn it into something to laugh about?" Sarah looked around the room, at her parents' disappointed faces, at the evidence of her deception scattered across our coffee table, at me standing calmly with my arms crossed. David, please. We can work through this. I'll end things with Marcus. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. Sarah, I said quietly, last week you told your friends that living with me was like having a pet that pays bills. Tonight you laughed about how trusting I am, how easy it's been to deceive me. You used our anniversary necklace as a prop in your joke about my naivety. I was just trying to fit in with my friends. I didn't mean those things. You meant them enough to laugh about them. You meant them enough to plan this deception for months. You meant them enough to use your parents as alibis for your affair. Robert Morrison picked up the evidence folder and looked at his daughter one more time. Sarah, until you understand the magnitude of what you've done, until you acknowledge the cruelty of your actions, your mother and I can't support you. What does that mean? It means we're cutting you off. Financially. Emotionally. Until you demonstrate genuine remorse and make real amends to David. Daddy, you can't be serious? I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Linda Morrison stood up and walked to where I was standing. David, I am so sorry. We failed to raise our daughter to be the kind of person you deserve to marry. Linda, you have nothing to apologize for. You raised Sarah with good values. She chose to abandon them. What can we do? How can we help? Be there for each other. This is going to be difficult for your whole family. Robert Morrison shook my hand, something he'd done thousands of times before, but never with the weight of finality it carried tonight. David, you're a good man. You deserve better than this. Sarah watched her parents prepare to leave with growing desperation. Mom, Dad, please don't go. Please don't leave me like this. You left David like this months ago, Linda replied. The only difference is he didn't deserve it. After her parents left, Sarah and I stood in our living room surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal and the wreckage of our marriage. David, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. But we can fix this. We can rebuild our marriage stronger than before. I looked at the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd trusted completely, the woman who'd found my trust amusing enough to share jokes about it with her friends. Sarah, you don't understand. This isn't something we fix. This is something you did. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie to me daily. You chose to mock our marriage to your friends. You chose to use my love for you as material for comedy. I was confused. I was unhappy. I made mistakes. You were calculating. You planned every lie, every deception, every moment of cruelty. You weren't confused, Sarah. You were deliberate. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should find somewhere else to stay tonight, and probably for the foreseeable future. David, please. The house is in my name. The car you drove here is in my name. The credit cards you've been using for your affair are in my name. Your parents have cut you off. Your affair partner is probably going to lose his job. I handed her the keys to her car, the only thing she'd be able to take with her. You laughed at me for being trusting. You mocked me for being kind. You turned my love into a joke for your friends' entertainment. Sarah was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. I'd seen her real feelings about our marriage, heard her actual opinion of my character. It's funny, I said as she gathered her purse and jacket. You thought I was clueless, but I've known about your affair for 3 weeks. I documented everything. I planned tonight down to the minute. I made sure your parents heard you mock our marriage in your own words before I presented the evidence. You set me up? I gave you the opportunity to show everyone who you really are. You did the rest yourself. Sarah walked to the door, then turned back one more time. David, I loved you. I still love you. No, Sarah. You loved having someone who paid the bills while you entertained yourself with someone else. You loved having a husband so trusting that you could mock him to your friends without consequences. That's not true. You called me a pet that pays bills. Those were your words, not mine. I closed the door behind her and locked it. Then I sat in our living room, my living room now, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. peace. The next 3 months passed like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Every consequence I'd predicted came to pass, often more dramatically than I'd anticipated. Marcus Crawford was terminated from Crawford Technologies within a week of my call to their HR department. Their investigation revealed not only his inappropriate relationship with Sarah, but also that he'd been padding his expense reports to cover the costs of their hotel meetings. What had started as a violation of fraternization policies became a case of expense fraud. His wife, Linda, found out about the affair when Crawford Technologies called her to verify Marcus's home address for final paperwork delivery. She filed for divorce and full custody of their children, taking half his assets and his pension in the settlement. Sarah found herself unemployed within 2 weeks. Her marketing agency, which depended heavily on its reputation for integrity and family values, couldn't afford to keep an employee whose personal conduct had become public knowledge. Several clients specifically requested that Sarah be removed from their accounts. But the most devastating consequences for Sarah were the personal ones. Robert and Linda Morrison kept their word about cutting off support. They stopped taking her calls, returned her letters unopened, and made it clear to extended family that they wouldn't tolerate any financial or emotional support for Sarah until she demonstrated genuine remorse. Sarah's friends, the same women who'd laughed at her jokes about my naivety, distanced themselves once the reality of the situation became clear. Apparently, finding adultery amusing in theory was different from being associated with it in practice. She was forced to move into a studio apartment across town, the only place she could afford with her savings and unemployment benefits. Her car was repossessed when she couldn't make payments, leaving her dependent on public transportation. 6 weeks after our confrontation, Sarah called me. "David, I need to talk to you." "Sarah, we're communicating through lawyers now. You know that. Please, just 5 minutes. I'm struggling, and I don't know what to do." That's what happens when you burn down your life. "David, I lost my job. My parents won't speak to me. My friends won't return my calls. Marcus won't even acknowledge me when we pass on the street. I'm sorry you're experiencing consequences for your choices. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible decisions, but I'm drowning here. I have nobody left. Sarah, you had me. You had your parents. You had a marriage and a home and a future. You chose to trade all of that for a laugh with your friends and an affair with a married man. I know, I understand that now. But David, I'm begging you, can we try counseling? Can we try to rebuild what we had? What we had was built on my trust and your deception. You can't rebuild something when the foundation was already broken. So that's it? 8 years of marriage and you're just done. Sarah, I wasn't the one who ended our marriage. I was making dinner while you were laughing about deceiving me. I was buying you anniversary gifts while you were using them as props and jokes about my naivety. I was confused. No, you weren't confused. You were calculating. You planned every lie, documented your deception in text messages, and found my trust amusing enough to share with your friends. David, please. I'll do anything to fix this. You can't fix this, Sarah. You can't unsay the things you said about our marriage. You can't unlaugh at my trust in you. You can't undo 4 months of deliberate deception. So what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to live with the consequences of your choices, just like I'm living with the consequences of trusting you. She hung up, and I never heard from her again directly. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Sarah received no alimony. Colorado's adultery provisions and her documented deception made that impossible. She received no share of our assets beyond her personal belongings. She received no retirement benefits, no claim on the house, nothing beyond what she'd brought into the marriage. Our mutual friends, once they learned the full story, were universally supportive of my position. The idea that someone would mock their spouse's trust and kindness was so fundamentally repulsive that Sarah found herself completely socially isolated. A year later, I heard through Linda Morrison, who had eventually reconciled with me, though not with Sarah, that Sarah was working as a server at a chain restaurant and living with a roommate she'd found on Craigslist. She asks about you sometimes, Linda told me during one of our occasional lunches. She wants to know if you're happy. What do you tell her? I tell her that's not her concern anymore. Are you and Robert planning to reconcile with her? David, I've thought about that a lot. Sarah is my daughter, and I love her. But I can't forgive how she treated you. The cruelty, the calculated deception, the way she mocked your kindness. That's not the person Robert and I raised. People make mistakes, Linda. This wasn't a mistake. This was a character failure. And until Sarah acknowledges that, really acknowledges it, not just apologizes because she's facing consequences, I can't trust her judgment about anything. 2 years after our divorce, I remarried. My new wife, Jennifer, was a teacher I'd met through volunteer work. She appreciated kindness and trust as strengths rather than weaknesses to be exploited. On our wedding day, Robert Morrison gave a toast that summarized the entire experience better than I ever could. David, you deserved better than what Sarah gave you. But more importantly, you demanded better when you realized what you were actually getting. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is refusing to accept treatment that diminishes your worth. As I looked around our reception, filled with friends and family who valued honesty and commitment, I realized that Sarah had actually done me a favor. She'd shown me exactly what I was worth by treating me like I was worthless. And in doing so, she'd forced me to demand the respect I'd always deserved but had never asked for. 3 years later, I received an unexpected piece of mail, a handwritten letter from Sarah forwarded through my lawyer's office. David, I know I have no right to contact you, and I don't expect a response, but I wanted you to know that I've been in therapy for 2 years now, and I'm finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what I did to you and our marriage. I spent our entire relationship taking your kindness for granted. I mistook your trust for naivety, your love for weakness, and your commitment for something I could exploit without consequences. I know now that what I did wasn't just adultery. It was emotional abuse. I systematically undermined your sense of reality while mocking you to others for believing in me. That level of cruelty is inexcusable. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that losing you, and losing the person I thought I was, forced me to confront who I'd actually become. It wasn't someone I could live with. I hope you're happy. You deserve every good thing life can offer. Sarah. I read the letter twice, then filed it away without responding. Some apologies, no matter how sincere, come too late to matter. Some damage can't be repaired by remorse alone. But as I sat in the home I'd built with Jennifer, listening to her laugh at something genuinely funny on television, I realized that Sarah's betrayal had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. That trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something you offer to people who've proven they deserve it. That kindness isn't weakness when it's given to those who value it. And that sometimes the people who laugh at your best qualities are simply revealing that they don't possess them themselves. Sarah had mocked me for being the kind of husband who brought dinner to his wife's office when she worked late. Jennifer thanked me for it every time. Sarah had laughed about how trusting I was, how easy it was to deceive me. Jennifer earned that trust every day and protected it like the precious thing it was. Sarah had called me a pet that pays bills. Jennifer called me her partner, her equal, her best friend. The difference between those two responses told me everything I needed to know about the difference between settling for someone who would tolerate your love and finding someone who would treasure it. As I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to the woman who'd never once made me question my worth, I thought about that wine night 3 years ago when I'd stood in the hallway listening to my wife mock our marriage. It had been the worst moment of my life. It had also been the moment I'd started building the best life I'd ever known. Sarah thought she was laughing at me, but in the end, she'd given me the greatest gift possible. The knowledge that I deserved better. And the courage to demand it, 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 demand it.